my daughter-in-law's house rules led to my calm departure. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I didn't scream when my daughter-in-law handed me a 20-page binder of rules for living in the house I paid for. I just smiled. That memory played in my mind like a pathetic movie as I sat in a plush chair in my real estate agent's downtown office. The pen in my hand felt heavy, but the ink flowed smoothly across the thick paper. I was officially signing the closing documents for a stunning, sunlit luxury condominium overlooking the city skyline. It was entirely mine. No shared equity, no passive-aggressive notes taped to the refrigerator, and absolutely no rules dictating what hours I was permitted to brew a cup of tea. Just 3 years ago, I had sold the beautiful colonial home where my late husband Robert and I had raised our only son, David. I was grieving, vulnerable, and drowning in the echoing silence of that big, empty house, when David and his wife, Vanessa, approached me with a proposal to pool our resources and buy a massive forever home with an attached guest suite for me. It sounded like a lifeline. I handed over a $150,000 cashier's check for their down payment, effectively liquidating my most significant asset to secure their dream. In return, I was promised family dinners, a cozy sanctuary to age in place, and the warmth of a bustling household. Would you pay $150,000 to be treated like a prisoner in your own home? Because that is exactly what I purchased. The illusion of a happy family shattered faster than cheap glass. Instead of a loving home, I found myself trapped in a sterile, beige museum curated by a woman who viewed me as a combination of an unwanted squatter, an ATM machine, and an unpaid domestic servant. I sacrificed the financial security Robert had worked his entire life to build, trading my freedom for a corner room in a house where my very existence seemed to deeply offend my daughter-in-law. But as I signed my name on the final line of the condo deed, a profound sense of peace washed over my tired bones. I wasn't just buying a new property today. I was buying back my dignity, my independence, and my absolute peace of mind. I knew the storm that was coming for them would be entirely of their own making. I smiled warmly, fully prepared to execute the final phase of my quiet, devastating escape. My descent into this domestic nightmare began precisely 14 months after Robert passed away from a sudden heart attack. We had been married for nearly 4 decades. He was a steady, brilliant accountant who made sure we were incredibly comfortable, and his absence left a crater in my life that felt impossible to navigate. I was rattling around our 4-bedroom house, surrounded by memories and ghosts, paralyzed by grief. David, my sweet but notoriously conflict-avoidant son, started coming over more often. He would sit at my kitchen table, nursing a beer, talking endlessly about how much he and Vanessa wanted to upgrade from their cramped townhouse to start a family. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in this huge place," David said one evening, looking at me with genuine concern in his eyes. Vanessa found this incredible new development. Massive properties. One of the models has a beautiful, fully integrated guest suite on the ground floor. If we combined our equity, we could buy it outright, or at least have a tiny mortgage. You'd be right there with us. We could take care of you. In my vulnerable state, the idea of being surrounded by family felt like salvation. I didn't want to be a lonely widow. I wanted to be an active, helpful grandmother. I agreed to sell the family home. The market was booming, and the sale netted a substantial profit. I cheerfully wrote David and Vanessa a check for $150,000 to serve as the down payment on a sprawling, modern farmhouse-style mansion in a highly desirable, gated suburb. I also quietly agreed to transfer $1,500 into their account every single month to help cover the property taxes and utilities, assuming this was just part of contributing to my new household. I packed my favorite antique furniture, my cherished photo albums, and my entire life into boxes, genuinely excited for this new chapter. I envisioned Sunday roasts, shared gardens, and a supportive environment. I thought I was making a sound investment in my family's future and my own emotional well-being. I had absolutely no idea that I was essentially paying a premium price to walk directly into an emotional prison disguised as luxury living. The warning signs flashed bright red the second the moving trucks pulled into their pristine driveway. The day of the move was chaotic, but I was running on pure adrenaline and hope. My friend Beatrice, a wonderfully sharp-tongued retired lawyer who had known me since college, came over to help direct the movers. As the men began unloading my carefully wrapped cherry wood dining table, a piece Robert and I had purchased on our 5th anniversary, Vanessa appeared in the driveway. She was wearing crisp white athleisure, holding a clipboard, and looking at my belongings with an expression of profound disgust. "Oh, Helen," Vanessa sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "We didn't realize you were bringing so much clutter. This table is incredibly bulky and, frankly, very dated." I froze, a heavy antique mirror held in my hands. "Vanessa, this is my dining table. It goes in my suite." She offered a tight, patronizing smile. "Actually, David and I decided the suite looks much better with the open floor plan. We are cultivating a very specific modern minimalist aesthetic. That heavy, dark wood completely ruins the feng shui. The movers can just put all this vintage stuff directly into the garage for now. We can discuss renting a storage unit for you later." I looked at David, who was suddenly very interested in his shoelaces. "David?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Yeah, Mom. Let's just put it in the garage for today. We don't want to scratch the new hardwood floors." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Beatrice shot me a look that screamed, "What have you done?" My beautiful antiques, my comfortable reading chair, the cedar chest that smelled like Robert's old sweaters. It was all banished to the cold, concrete garage. I was left with a sterile, beige-on-beige suite furnished with a cheap, uncomfortable modern sofa and a glass desk that Vanessa had pre-selected. "Just keeping things streamlined, Helen," she texted me that night from upstairs, complete with a smiley face emoji. I tried to convince myself it was just moving day stress, a temporary misunderstanding that we would resolve once everyone was settled. The aesthetic banishment was only the beginning of her aggressive campaign to completely erase my presence. I spent the first week walking on eggshells, trying to navigate this sterile museum they called a home. On the morning of my second Sunday there, Vanessa invited me to the main kitchen for a family alignment meeting. I arrived expecting coffee and perhaps a discussion about grocery shopping. Instead, Vanessa sat at the pristine marble island, flanked by David. She slid a thick, white, 3-ring binder across the counter toward me. The cover page read, in bold Helvetica font, "The Resident's Standard Operating Procedures." I opened it, genuinely confused. "What is this, Vanessa?" "Just some basic house rules to ensure we all respect each other's boundaries and maintain the home's aesthetic value," she chirped brightly. I began flipping through the pages, and my blood ran cold. There were 20 printed pages of aggressively detailed restrictions. Section 2 outlined kitchen usage curfews, explicitly stating that I was not permitted to use the main kitchen or my suite's kitchenette before 7 a.m. or after 8 p.m. to avoid disrupting the household acoustics. Section 4 dictated shower time limits, no longer than 10 minutes, to conserve hot water. But the most jarring was Section 7, guest protocol. It stated that any visitors for me had to be pre-approved 2 weeks in advance and were not permitted in the common areas. "Wait," I said, looking up in shock. "I can't have Beatrice over for afternoon tea without submitting a formal written request 14 days in advance." Vanessa smiled thinly. "We just have a very busy, high-stress lifestyle, Helen. Having random people wandering around our sanctuary triggers my anxiety. It's really best if you do your socializing at a local cafe." "Would you pay $150,000 to be handed a literal rulebook dictating your basic bodily functions and friendships?" I looked at David, desperately waiting for him to step in, to laugh and say this was a ridiculous joke. I waited for my son to defend the mother who had just handed him the keys to his financial future. But the defense I was hoping for completely failed to materialize in that agonizingly quiet room. Later that evening, after Vanessa had gone to her spin class, I cornered David in the living room. I held the heavy white binder in my shaking hands. "David, you cannot be serious about this," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "I gave you the down payment for this house. I am giving you $1,500 a month. I am your mother, not a troublesome tenant in a halfway house. Kitchen curfews? A ban on Beatrice coming over?" David sighed heavily, the familiar gesture he always used when he wanted to avoid a difficult conversation. He rubbed the back of his neck, refusing to make direct eye contact with me. "Mom, please, just try to see it from her perspective. Vanessa has a lot of clinical anxiety regarding her living environment. She needs order to feel safe. The rules aren't meant to punish you. They're just her coping mechanism. Her coping mechanism is treating me like a prisoner. I countered, tears of sheer frustration stinging my eyes. David, she banished my furniture. She wants to dictate when I can take a warm shower in my own bathroom. How can you stand there and let her humiliate me like this? It's just for a little while, Mom, he pleaded, his voice taking on a whining, pathetic tone. Once she gets used to you being here, she'll relax. Just comply with the binder for now. Please, don't make this a massive issue. I work 50 hours a week, and I just want peace when I come home. He was asking me to shrink myself, to erase my dignity entirely, just to save him from having an uncomfortable conversation with his own wife. The betrayal stung far worse than any of Vanessa's absurd printed rules. In that moment, looking at my grown son cowering behind excuses, a fundamental shift occurred inside me. The loving, accommodating mother who had moved in to help him completely vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating realism. I realized no one was going to save me from this nightmare except for myself entirely. Once David made it perfectly clear he would not protect me, Vanessa's reign of terror escalated rapidly. The binder was apparently a living document, subject to arbitrary, daily revisions. Soon, passive-aggressive text messages began replacing verbal communication. Hi, Helen. Noticed some water spots on the guest bath mirror. Section 3 covers maintaining glass surfaces. Please rectify ASAP. Smiley face. I was 62 years old, and I was being micromanaged like a rebellious teenager. But the most insidious shift was the gradual introduction of the contribution chore lists. Since I was retired and had so much free time, Vanessa decided I needed to pull my weight around the house, conveniently ignoring the $1,500 I silently transferred into their account every single month. Every morning, I woke up to find a perfectly printed, color-coded list taped to my door. It started small, receiving packages, letting out their hyperactive golden retriever, Cooper. But soon, it ballooned into unpaid, intensive domestic labor. I was tasked with dry cleaning runs, hand-washing her delicate silk blouses, and deep cleaning the baseboards in the main living areas while they were at work. If I missed a spot, she would dramatically sigh and clean it herself while I was in the room, making sure I watched her fix my mistakes. When I tentatively mentioned to David that I felt like a hired maid, he just shrugged. Mom, you live here rent-free. It's only fair you help out with the upkeep since you don't work anymore. Rent-free. My own son, living in a house secured by my $150,000 life savings, genuinely believed I was a financial burden who needed to earn her keep through manual labor. The sheer audacity of his delusion was staggering. I swallowed my pride, silently folded their laundry, and walked their dog in the freezing rain. I was biding my time, waiting to see just how far they would push me before I snapped. The psychological warfare was exhausting, but it was also highly educational, teaching me exactly who they were. I knew a breaking point was rapidly approaching, and I promised myself I would be ready. The final straw didn't involve a massive screaming match or a dramatic confrontation in the living room. It was shockingly quiet, cruel, and profoundly personal. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I had spent the morning carefully polishing a small, tarnished brass compass that had belonged to my late husband, Robert. He carried it with him on every hiking trip we ever took, and the scent of the metal always brought his memory rushing back to me. I had left it resting on the marble countertop of my small kitchenette while I went to answer the front door to sign for one of Vanessa's endless packages. When I returned 10 minutes later, the compass was completely gone. I frantically searched the floor, thinking it had rolled off. Then, my eyes darted to the stainless steel trash can. I opened the lid, and there it was, sitting at the bottom amongst coffee grounds and discarded food wrappers. At that exact moment, Vanessa breezed into my suite carrying a stack of towels. Oh, Helen, I noticed you left some random junk on the counter, she said breezily, not even breaking her stride. You know Section 5 strictly prohibits countertop clutter to maintain a serene environment. I just tossed it for you. We really need to work on your hoarding tendencies. She threw away my dead husband's compass because it violated an arbitrary aesthetic rule in a binder. She didn't apologize. She didn't care. I reached into the garbage, carefully retrieved the compass, and wiped the coffee grounds off the glass. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Instead, an absolute, freezing calm washed over my entire body, silencing the grief and replacing it with something infinitely sharper. The mother who wanted to keep the peace definitively died in that kitchenette. I looked at Vanessa, who was meticulously aligning the towels in the cabinet, completely oblivious to the monster she had just awakened. I looked at her, completely oblivious to the terrifying monster she had just permanently awakened inside. I slipped the brass compass safely into my pocket and turned to face my daughter-in-law. "You are absolutely right, Vanessa," I said, my voice completely devoid of any emotion, smooth and flat as a frozen lake. "I apologize for the clutter. I will review Section 5 again tonight to ensure it doesn't happen again." She paused, clearly expecting me to dissolve into tears or start a fight. When I just smiled at her with chilling politeness, she looked slightly unnerved. "Oh, well, good. I'm glad we are finally on the same page, Helen," she muttered, quickly exiting the room. The moment her footsteps faded down the hallway, I locked my door. I pulled out my phone and dialed Beatrice. She answered on the second ring. "B," I whispered, my voice hard and steady. "You were right about everything. They don't want a mother. They want a highly compliant ATM that also scrubs toilets." Beatrice sighed, the rustle of papers echoing in the background. "I told you, Helen. So what is the play? Are we yelling, or are we going nuclear?" "We are going utterly, silently nuclear," I replied. "I need you to recommend the most ruthless, discreet real estate broker you know. I am leaving, but I am doing it exactly on my own terms. Arguing with a narcissist and an enabler was a complete waste of oxygen. Explaining my pain to people committed to misunderstanding me would only give them more ammunition. The only way to win their twisted, abusive game was to stop playing it entirely and dismantle the board from the inside out. For the next 3 weeks, I became the absolute perfect tenant. I followed every single rule in the binder to the letter. I washed the baseboards, I stayed in my room after 8 o'clock, and I smiled blankly whenever David condescendingly praised me for adjusting to the household dynamic. All the while, I was meticulously and silently plotting their total, absolute, and utterly crushing devastation. Executing a secret real estate acquisition while living under Vanessa's microscopic surveillance required the precision of a military operation. To maintain the illusion of my pathetic, compliant existence, I utilized the chore list she so generously provided. When I was supposedly out running her dry cleaning errands or taking Cooper on incredibly long afternoon walks, I was actually sitting in the plush passenger seat of a luxury SUV driven by Marcus, the shark-like real estate broker Beatrice had connected me with. Marcus understood the assignment perfectly. I needed something turnkey, incredibly secure, and completely unassociated with my son. For days, I toured properties across the city, far away from the sterile suburban nightmare I was currently trapped in. I changed out of my cleaning clothes in coffee shop bathrooms, slipping into tailored slacks and cashmere sweaters to view high-end properties. It was exhilarating. Every signature on a disclosure form felt like taking a deep, clean breath of fresh air. Finally, on a rainy Thursday while David and Vanessa were both at their corporate offices, Marcus showed me a stunning, brand-new condominium on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, warm oak flooring, and a sprawling, open kitchen that begged to be used at any hour of the day or night. It was bright, welcoming, and completely devoid of beige. "I'll take it," I told Marcus, looking out over the city skyline. "Cash offer. 30-day close." Since I had banked the profits from the sale of my original family home and lived incredibly frugally under Vanessa's rule, my financial reserves were more than sufficient. I didn't need a mortgage. I just needed a quiet, rapid closing. I returned to the suburban prison that evening, wiping down the kitchen counters exactly at 7:45 p.m., a secret, triumphant smile playing on my lips. I wiped down the counters exactly at 8, a secret, triumphant smile playing on my lips. Securing the condo was only the first half of my master plan. The second phase required dismantling the financial safety net I had foolishly built for them. 2 days after my offer was accepted, I told Vanessa I was going to the pharmacy to pick up her specialty vitamins. Instead, I drove straight to the main branch of my bank and sat down with a personal banker. "I need to make some immediate, permanent adjustments to my accounts," I told the young man, sliding my ID across the mahogany desk. First, I addressed the joint emergency house fund David had convinced me to open with him. I legally removed my name from the account and withdrew exactly the amount I had initially deposited, transferring it back to my private, unlinked savings. Next came the kill shot. I currently have an automated recurring transfer of $1,500 scheduled for the first of every month, going to this external routing number, I said, pointing to the line item on my statement. I need that canceled immediately and permanently block any future requests from that account. The banker clicked a few buttons. Done, Mrs. Miller. The recurring transfer is terminated. I walked out of the bank feeling 10 years younger. For over a year, my $1,500 monthly gift was the only thing allowing David and Vanessa to afford the massive property taxes and utility bills on a house they had no business buying in the first place. Without my silent, invisible subsidy, their meticulously crafted financial facade was going to collapse under its own heavy weight. They treated me like a useless burden, completely oblivious to the fact that I was the only foundational pillar keeping their precious, minimalist roof from caving in on them entirely. I drove back to the house, handed Vanessa her vitamins, and waited patiently for the perfect opportunity to vanish without a trace. I handed her the vitamins and waited patiently for the perfect opportunity to vanish without warning. The universe, it seemed, was highly eager to reward my patience. A week after the condo closed, Vanessa strutted into the kitchen waving a glossy brochure. David and I have been under so much stress lately, she announced, dramatically pouring herself a glass of cucumber water. We've decided we desperately need a reset. We booked a 3-day weekend at that new spa retreat up in the mountains. We leave Friday morning. I kept my face entirely neutral, fighting the massive wave of adrenaline surging through my veins. That sounds lovely, Vanessa. You both work so hard. You deserve a break. I replied sweetly, wiping a non-existent smudge off the granite island. Cooper is going to a boarding kennel, so you don't need to worry about him, she added, handing me a typed list. But I do need you to deep clean the guest suite carpets and organize the garage while we are gone. Consider it a project to keep you busy. Of course, I nodded, taking the list. Have a wonderful, relaxing trip. Friday morning arrived with a flurry of packed luxury luggage and passive-aggressive reminders about not touching the thermostat. David gave me a quick, distracted hug. Vanessa barely offered a nod before slipping on her oversized sunglasses. I stood on the pristine front porch, waving like the perfect, dutiful mother as David backed his expensive leased SUV out of the driveway. I watched their car slowly roll down the manicured street. The absolute second their taillights disappeared around the corner of the gated entrance, I dropped my hand, turned on my heel, and walked back inside. The suffocating silence of the massive, beige house felt fundamentally different this time. It felt like a perfectly empty stage waiting for the final, destructive act. I pulled my cell phone from my pocket, dialed Beatrice's number, and took a deep breath. They're gone. Send them in, I said into the phone. Less than 20 minutes later, a massive, unmarked moving truck backed into the driveway. Beatrice jumped out of the passenger side, holding a clipboard and a massive iced coffee, grinning like a general coordinating a highly successful invasion. She was followed by 4 massive, professional movers who operated with terrifying, beautiful efficiency. We didn't waste a single second. Because I had lived so minimally under Vanessa's draconian rules, I had very little to pack inside the actual suite. My clothes and personal items were boxed up and loaded into the truck in under an hour. The real work was in the cold, concrete garage. The movers carefully extracted my antique dining table, the heavy cedar chest, and the comfortable reading chairs that Vanessa had banished on my very first day. We rescued every single piece of my past that she had tried to erase. The speed and precision of the operation were a masterclass in logistics. We didn't scratch a floorboard or dent a single beige wall. I watched as the last box was loaded, feeling an immense, physical weight lifting from my chest. In less than 3 hours, we had completely and utterly scrubbed my existence from the property. The guest suite was entirely bare, stripped down to the cheap modern sofa and the glass desk Vanessa had forced upon me. There was no trace of me left, no scent of my perfume, no coats in the closet, no toothbrush by the sink. It was exactly the sterile, minimalist aesthetic she claimed to love so much. completely devoid of any human warmth or annoying clutter. I stood in the center of the completely empty room, marveling at the profound, echoing silence of my own absolute freedom. Beatrice tapped me gently on the shoulder and handed me a thick, crisp, white paper envelope. I took the envelope and walked out of the guest suite for the final time. I moved slowly through the massive, quiet house, ensuring absolutely everything was exactly as they had left it. I didn't steal their light bulbs or leave a mess. The revenge was in the absolute perfection of my absence. I walked into the main kitchen and stood at the pristine marble island. I gently placed the infamous 20-page Residence Standard Operating Procedures binder dead center on the counter. Beside it, I placed the heavy brass key to the front door, the garage remote, and the crisp white envelope. Inside the envelope was a single, handwritten note. I kept it brief, professional, and entirely devoid of the emotional hysterics they probably expected. David and Vanessa, I have officially moved out and permanently relocated. I have also terminated the $1,500 monthly automatic transfer, as I am no longer a resident contributing to the household utilities. I wish you both the best of luck managing the property and maintaining your strict aesthetic moving forward. Do not attempt to contact me. Helen. There were no dramatic accusations, no desperate pleas for David to realize his mistakes, and absolutely no apologies. It was a cold, hard statement of fact, a sudden and brutal termination of my services as their emotional punching bag and secret financial sponsor. I locked the front door behind me, slipping the spare key through the mail slot, permanently severing my final physical tie to the sprawling house I had essentially bought for them. I climbed into the passenger seat of Beatrice's car, physically exhausted but vibrating with a terrifying, entirely new, and powerful energy. As we finally drove away from the pristine neighborhood, I didn't look back at the suburban mansion even once. I was entirely focused on the beautiful, bright future waiting for me in the city. The weekend passed in a glorious haze of unpacking my beloved antiques into my sunlit condo. I drank coffee at 6 a.m., played jazz music loudly in the living room, and had Beatrice over for wine without filling out a single request form. The inevitable explosion happened late Sunday evening. My phone, which I had placed on a side table, began vibrating violently. It was David. I let it go straight to voicemail. Then came a text from Vanessa. "Where's all your stuff? What is this note?" Then, another call from David. Over the next 2 hours, he left 6 increasingly panicked, breathless voicemails. "Mom, please pick up the phone. What is going on? You can't just leave without warning." By Monday morning, the panic had mutated into absolute, terrifying financial reality. The first of the month had triggered, and my $1,500 transfer had not arrived. David's final voicemail was a masterpiece of cowardly desperation. "Mom, my auto pay for the mortgage just bounced. The bank is charging overdraft fees. I don't understand. You know Vanessa's salary barely covers her car lease and the country club dues. How are we supposed to afford this place without your monthly contribution? Please, we can talk about the rules." Vanessa said she's willing to compromise on the shower limits. The absolute pathetic irony of his plea washed over me. The woman who had handed me a 20-page binder dictating my existence was now offering to compromise because she realized she was staring down the barrel of a massive foreclosure. They had treated the golden goose like absolute garbage, and now they were furious that the eggs had stopped arriving. I didn't reply to a single message. I forwarded the voicemails to a secure folder and blocked both of their numbers permanently. It has been 6 months since I executed my silent departure, and I am currently sitting on the balcony of my new condo, drinking tea at whatever time I damn well please. The fallout for David and Vanessa was swift and brutal. Through mutual family friends, I heard they were forced to list the dream house for sale to avoid foreclosure, unable to afford the crushing property taxes and mortgage payments without my secret monthly subsidy. Vanessa's precious aesthetic couldn't save them from basic accounting. David tried to ambush me at my old bank once, begging me to come back and fix things for them, but I looked right through him and walked to my car. The door is permanently closed. I grieve for the relationship I thought I had with my son, but I refuse to set myself on fire to keep his toxic, entitled wife warm. To any parents out there who are considering liquidating their hard-earned assets to fund their children's expensive lifestyles, I offer this vital advice. Do not do it without ironclad legal protections, and absolutely never surrender your independence. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional financial submission. If your children allow their partners to disrespect you, isolate you, or treat you like an unpaid servant, they do not view you as a parent. They view you as a highly convenient resource to be exploited. Your dignity is worth far more than maintaining the illusion of a happy family. You cannot argue with people who are deeply committed to abusing you, and you cannot buy respect from people who fundamentally lack character. Sometimes, the most powerful, devastating, and necessary thing you can ever do is pack your bags, cancel the checks, and let the crushing weight of their own consequences handle the rest. I bought back my absolute freedom in silence, and the resulting peace is incredibly beautiful.